Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. It's Rosh Muhammad Salih here, the editor of Five Pillars, and we have decided to do this unscripted impromptu live because in the last few hours we've been getting unconfirmed reports so far that the leader of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, has been killed by Israeli forces in Gaza in a firefight. I just want to confirm that this information has not been confirmed either by Israel nor by Hamas up to now. However, we have decided to go live. Normally, we don't go live on the basis of rumors, as people are saying, or some people are saying in the comments already. But we felt that we should because Israeli Army radio is already confirming this. Pictures are doing the rounds on social media. Israeli media is confirming this. Also, we know that Benjamin Netanyahu will speak in about an hour. That probably means something. And the Israelis seem quite confident. And we know that when it's somebody of very high value target like this, that the Israelis seem to be double checking before they go public. We know that they're liars. We know that they've lied through their teeth since the beginning of this conflict, whether it's about what happened on October the 7th, whether it's about the nature of the resistance organizations, a whole plethora of things, open lies, blatant lies, well-exposed lies. But we felt as though we should go live now because all the major news organizations are going live at the moment, and therefore we didn't really want to miss out. And I would say it's probably 80% sure that this news is confirmed. But during the course of this live, we will probably get confirmation one way or the other. Let me read out the latest news, brothers and sisters, before I go on. So Israeli army is saying that it's investigating whether Yahya Sinwar has been killed in Gaza. There's been no comment from Hamas so far. Israeli police say they are investigating the DNA and the dental evidence on what they presume to be Yahya Sinwar, who they say was killed in a firefight either yesterday or today. And that takes around 4 hours to basically confirm whether it will be him or not. However, media reports are also saying that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to give a statement in about an hour, which we might even carry live if we continue that long tonight. I am going to bring in Robert Carter and inshallah Dili Hussein as well to comment on this soon. I should just kind of say a few more things before I bring in Robert. Let me bring him in on the screen now because I can see him there backstage. Assalamu alaikum, Robert. I'm going to just talk a little bit more before bringing you in, inshallah. So there have been corpse photos going around on X and other social media. We're not going to show that. Obviously, out of respect, we don't like showing dead people, but also in the past, Israel has come out with these so-called corpse photos of Yahya Sinwar, and it's proved not to be the case. In terms of what people are saying on Al Jazeera and other platforms, some people are saying that this could actually, obviously, it would be a massive blow to Hamas if it's the case, but people are saying this is far from the end of Hamas. They're still a fighting force, and it will just create more recruits for Hamas. Some are even speculating that Benjamin Netanyahu may take this opportunity, if it is confirmed that Yahya Sinwar has been killed, to basically call to declare victory, to say mission accomplished. And this could be the end of the Gaza war. I'm not so sure about that. We'll talk a little bit during the course of this live of who is Yahya Sinwar, what was his career. We'll also talk about what perhaps might happen after him, who will succeed him, etc., etc. We should also say that we're broadcasting from the UK. So in the UK, Hamas is considered a terrorist organization according to UK law. Of course, in other countries around the world, we know we have lots of international viewers. Hamas is not considered a terrorist organization in other parts of the world, most of the world, in fact. And in fact, in a lot of the Arab and Muslim world, they are considered resistance freedom fighters. But given that we are broadcasting from the UK and people might be commenting from the UK, we should advise you to adhere to UK law, because you never know who's monitoring this feed as well. We have lots of supporters monitoring this feed, but we also have lots of enemies. So if you are from the UK, my strong advice to you is be careful what you say during this live, because it's not only friends that are watching, but probably foes as well. Let me bring in Robert, inshallah. Robert, your quick reaction to this news?
Walaikum salam for earlier as well. Thank you so much. Yeah, obviously it's a major development. There's no doubt about that. There are many questions. Obviously, initially we want to find out if this is actually true or not, because obviously, as we know, Israeli regime propaganda can't be accepted, and the Israelis themselves have yet to even make a claim that he's definitely been killed. So of course we're waiting to see how that turns out, and of course Hamas in Gaza as well haven't actually released any information on this yet either. So of course we're waiting for factual information to hit us before we make any final opinion. But obviously we're speculating about what this could mean, assuming that he has been killed. I think immediately the question is, you know, who will take over the leadership in Gaza, and also could it affect, because obviously he would have been leading the negotiations. He of course would have been the main person to have accepted any kind of deal or not, and now of course he's out of the picture. Will that change the direction of things? This is all what's being debated now, and of course, as you mentioned earlier, Roshan, as well, if this is confirmed to be the case, Israel's going to use this as a strategic or an objective win. They're going to parade it round, and Netanyahu, of course, is going to glorify this as much as he possibly can. But does this actually mean that the wind will be taken out of Hamas's desire to keep fighting? Does this mean that the Palestinians in Gaza will have lost their ability or their willingness to keep fighting against this oppressive occupying regime? That, of course, is also being asked. But I think we will discuss that here today, that regardless of whether he is alive or not, I don't think that the end of the fighting that's going on in Gaza or regionally is going to suddenly happen. But obviously we'll talk more about that. But yeah, a lot of question marks now about what implication this could have immediately and also in the long term as well.
Before I bring Dilly in, we've only got Dilly for about perhaps 20 minutes or so. So I'll kind of let him do a lot of the talking. But brothers and sisters, obviously we had no time to advertise this. Alhamdulillah, we have got over 620 people watching live already, which is a decent number. But inshallah, if you could share this link with friends and family so that you don't have to watch this on the mainstream media, you can watch it on Islamic media instead, I'd be very grateful. So just cut and paste the YouTube link, stick it on your WhatsApp, send it to friends and families. Let's get the numbers up, inshallah, over 1,000 watching live in the next few minutes, inshallah. Dilly, I'll bring you in. So no confirmation yet, but it's looking increasingly likely. I believe Netanyahu is going to give a statement in about an hour. That's another strong indication. One of the comments saying that Sky News has confirmed. I'm not sure about that. I'll look into it while Dilly's talking. Dilly, your quick reaction to what's happened today.
So just to go over the events of what happened, round about 3 p.m. UK time, Israeli soldiers were confronted by 3 resistance fighters, Hamas fighters, in the Tel Sultan area near Rafah. And these 3 men were then shelled by Israeli forces. A body was found which they believed had an uncanny resemblance to Yahya Sinwar. As we're speaking right now, DNA tests are being carried out to confirm whether it is Yahya Sinwar or not. And the fact that Netanyahu is due to have an emergency press conference in an hour probably proves that this is probably the case. Many prominent Israeli Twitter accounts are confirming the deaths. But the important thing here
there is, Dilly, apologies, there is breaking news. According to Sky News, Israel's foreign minister has said that Sinwar has been killed. That's breaking news being reported on Sky News right now. So it appears as if we have our first official announcement from Israel's foreign minister confirming the death of Sinwar in Gaza. Of course, we have yet to hear from Hamas themselves. I will allow you to continue, Dilly, and I'm going to check for further confirmation of this. But Sky News reporting right now comments from Israel's foreign minister there.
Thanks, Robert. So it took about 2 hours to carry out the DNA results, and they're probably going to confirm it very shortly, so it's done. But there's some important points of clarification here. We've heard for 12 months that Sinwar is hiding in tunnels, that he is using Israeli hostages as cover, that he is living a luxurious life, access to aid and everything under the tunnels, whilst the people of Gaza are suffering and are being killed and genocided. What today proves actually now that Yahya Sinwar was in plain sight. He was not fighting in tunnels, and he certainly was not using Israeli hostages as a cover. It also proves that this was not a targeted assassination. Therefore, I think it's safe to conclude now, beyond any reasonable doubt, not that there was any needed for the Muslims, is that the 12 months of genocide that we've seen was never about taking out Hamas. It was about flattening Gaza, decimating Gaza, exterminating as many Palestinians as possible, and if by lucky strike they managed to take out Mohammed Deif or Yahya Sinwar or any other senior leadership, then they'd obviously champion this as a victory. And I was thinking this whilst reading the Twitter feeds, right? And Roshan, please, I'd like to get your thoughts on this because you're the veteran here. The killing of Osama bin Laden did not stop Al-Qaeda. The death of Mullah Omar did not stop the Taliban. The killing of IRA leadership did not stop the IRA. And I do not believe the death of Hassan Nasrallah or Yahya Sinwar or Ismail Haniyeh will mean the end of the resistance. Because resistance, brothers and sisters, friends and foes, it's an idea. It could be Islamist, it could be Islamic, it could be right-wing, left-wing, secular, nationalist, Christian, it doesn't matter. The idea of resisting illegal Zionist occupation, irrespective of where that resistance comes from ideologically, will live on. And that is what actually needs to be discussed here. Because if Israel will take this as a victory, which they will beyond these assassinations, if they think that this is a victory, i.e. there will be no further resistance to their occupation, their illegal settlements, the genocide that they're carrying out as we speak, they are most certainly wrong, because assassinations and death of leaders doesn't usually result in the end of that movement or resistance. It usually means someone else will be born, they will be lionized, and there will be other resistance fighters, whether they are Hamas, whether they're PIJ, whether they are PFLP, whoever they are, whatever ideological spectrum they're born from the ashes of Gaza, there will be more resistance fighters born. What do you think is going to happen to these orphans? What do you think is going to happen to these young boys who have seen their entire families wiped out? They're going to resort and seek vengeance. So if Israel wants to take this as a win and as a victory, then stop the genocide. Stop the genocide then. Stop. In theory, since you've taken out the senior leadership, if it was all about dismantling Hamas and taking out their capabilities and their leadership who orchestrated October the 7th, then it could be argued that your goals have been met. But we already know this, that this was never their objectives. One very prominent American Zionist Israeli-American barrister, he asked me on Twitter, he said, so what is Israel doing in Gaza? Meaning they're there due to October the 7th. The point of the matter is that Israel did not require October the 7th to do what they are doing. It was sooner or later, it was a matter of when, not if. Israel is in Gaza, Israel is in Lebanon to basically expand its Greater Israel project, to ethnically cleanse the region of Arabs and Muslims, to further land grab, to create more settlements, and that has always been the agenda and the objective of the Zionist regime.
Yeah, just really briefly before I bring Robert back in, just responding to what Dilly asked me. Yeah, if you look at this historically, I mean, even if you look at the way, Hamas and Hezbollah and the others, how they describe when their leaders are killed, and not just their leaders, but foot soldiers as well, they come up with a Quranic verse, and then they said it was with great honor and dignity and pride, we announced the death of, etc., etc. So that gives you some kind of insight into their mentality, that they see martyrdom, as they would call it, as an occupational hazard. They know that their time is limited on this earth, and they don't expect to live very long. And Israel, I mean, Jilly was giving the example of the death of Osama bin Laden. What did that lead to? It led to ISIS.
Yep.
So it often leads to something even more angry and radical than was originally the case. And I honestly believe that the next leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas and others will be more determined to fight Israel. And they'll be more, they've lost everything. You know, they've lost their fathers, their sons, their children, their property, their wealth, their treasure. So they've got nothing to lose. It's not like us in the UK and the West, we're protecting our wealth and possessions, and we're really greedy for it. They've lost everything, and they have no hope for the future. Their lives are already over. So the way I see it is that you kill one leader of Hamas, you produce 1,000 foot soldiers. You kill one leader of Hezbollah, you produce 1,000 foot soldiers, etc., etc.
I mean, look, Afghanistan is perhaps the best example to use, yeah? US-led NATO forces entered Afghanistan on October the 7th, 2001. 20 years the occupation lasted, and the Taliban took the country back over without firing a single shot in 70% of the country, right? They were doing diplomacy in Doha whilst doing guerrilla warfare in the Tora Bora and the mountains of Afghanistan. So if the theory and the thinking is that the assassination of top leadership and senior leaders is the end of a movement, yeah, that's if these movements were cults. They're not cults, are they? They are movements that are born from the sons of those respective lands. Whether you agree with them ideologically, theologically, religiously, politically, militarily, that doesn't matter. The point of the matter is Hamas, as well as the other resistance groups, are Palestinians. Many of their membership and their foot soldiers are orphans of the parents that were killed by Israel in previous years and wars and conflicts. So no doubt Israel is going to champion this and gloat about this from the rooftops that this has been a victory, like they did with Hassan Nasrallah, with Mohammed Daif, with Ismail Haniyeh. Well, it all boils down to now, what is the objective of Israel? And I'm interested to hear the defenders and supporters of Israel, what they think now. Because they've been parroting for the last 12 months that it's about, taking out Hamas's leadership. It's about taking out Yahya Sinwar, the chief architect and the brains behind October the 7th. Well, come on, then you've done it now. What does that mean? Does that mean the end of the genocide? I don't think it does mean that. And that further proves the point that the reason why Israel is in Gaza as we speak is to take the entirety of Gaza, force the Palestinians into Egypt, and basically, land grab and annex Gaza. That's basically what it's there for.
Yeah, the notion of Greater Israel. We were talking about this yesterday on the podcast, weren't we, Robert? I'm going to bring you in, Robert, because obviously, but I want to read out maybe first of all a short bio of Yahya Sinwar, because for our viewers, he probably wasn't as well known as Ismail Haniyeh or Khalid Mashal or Hassan Nasrallah, for example. So let me read out the bio, but then I'll bring Robert in. I'm going to ask him a question, because people are saying that this could go two ways. One, it could be Netanyahu's a victory moment, mission accomplished, the end of the Gaza war. Or it could go the other way. No, we want Greater Israel. We want Gaza. We got our eyes on Gaza, the West Bank, and a lot more land, bit by bit. So Yahya Sinwar, brothers and sisters. So he's been the leader of Hamas, the overall leader of Hamas since the death of Ismail Haniyeh, the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh a few months ago. He was born in 1962, so he's 52 years old. 62 years old. Sorry. My maths is terrible. He was arrested multiple times by Israel and was sentenced to 4 life terms before being released in a 2011 prisoner exchange. So I think in that time when he was in jail, he learned to speak Hebrew fluently, and it made him more radical. Like most of the prisoners, they come out not kind of loving Israel, but hating Israel even more after their experiences. After his release from prison in 2011, he resumed leadership of Hamas's military wing, became leader of Hamas in Gaza in 2017, re-elected 2021, and then following Ismail Haniyeh's assassination, he became overall leader of Hamas. Israel considers him to be the architect of Operation Aqsa Flood on October the 7th last year. He was born in Khan Yunis refugee camp in the south of Gaza, I believe that is. From a family that was displaced within the 1948 areas. He attended the Islamic University of Gaza, where he was an active student leader with the Islamic Bloc, a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. That helped him build a leadership experience, led him to founding a Hamas security unit called the Majd, which was responsible for tracking Israeli collaborators and intelligence officers within Gaza. Getting to the end now. So he was first arrested in 1982, multiple prison sentences, as I said at the beginning. Within prison, he was seen as a leader. Even by Israel, they recognized him as a born leader. And since his release in that prisoner swap deal, he's become a very influential figure within Gaza, and ultimately one of the three top leaders of Hamas, with Khalid Mish'al, and the political leaders of Hamas, Khalid Mish'al, Ismail Haniyeh himself, and he had closer ties to the military wing than perhaps Haniyeh or Mish'al. So the police are examining the DNA. Let me bring in your Robert now. So how do you see this going? Is it going to be like a mission accomplished, end of war moment, or is Netanyahu and Israel going to go further with this genocide?
Well, obviously, we have to remember that many hostages remain in Gaza. That is, of course, one of the main objectives that still hasn't been achieved. I think Israel has actually killed more of its own hostages than it's been able to pull out of Gaza. So I don't think that Netanyahu can say job done and move away from what's going on right now. There's still more to be done, I think, from all perspectives. No one's satisfied with this situation, and Netanyahu remains in a very difficult situation. I think what he might be waiting for is for the outcome of the US presidential election. Right now, Biden is a spent force. He's borderline senile, and he's just letting Netanyahu carry on and do whatever he wants practically, and continuing to fund the war effort. So Netanyahu's just going to continue grinding and killing, and we know very well now, I think, we're not going to beat around the bush. Israel wants to destroy all of Palestine, wants to, if it has to, kill every single Palestinian down to the last child. They're very happy to do that, clearly, because that's what they're doing. I'm not just making this up. We're seeing it on screen. So Netanyahu's going to want to continue this. I don't think he's going to want to end the war because he still has yet to achieve significant objectives. Obviously, he'll portray this as a massive win, just as he has done with all the other figures that he's assassinated. But has Hezbollah stopped firing rockets into Israel? No. In fact, they're maintaining a regular barrage daily. Is Hamas defeated? No, they haven't, and he's already taken out a leader already, and several other senior figures within the group also. So, it's what Dilly mentioned earlier, that assassinating leaders of groups that from their perspective are fighting for survival, it just doesn't make a difference, quite frankly. And Yahya was born in a refugee camp in Gaza. The reason October the 7th happened is because of Israel's bloody role in massacring and stealing land from the Palestinians. It didn't start on October the 7th. It didn't start when Yahya took over as head of Hamas. It didn't start with Hamas. In fact, this all started in 1948 and even prior to that, with Britain's involvement and the West's involvement. So no, this is going to carry on. I think that any idea of negotiations at this stage is going to be hampered, not helped, which is something the Americans are actually saying right now. They're saying that perhaps with the death of Yahya, that there will be perhaps hope of progress in negotiations for a ceasefire. Well, quite frankly, why at this stage would any of the groups fighting Israel right now want for a ceasefire? Because Israel's already done as much as it can do. There's nothing left for them to. They have nothing to except to keep fighting. So Netanyahu has put himself in a big hole here. And although it won't appear that way with the propaganda that's going to come out of Israel over the next days and weeks, we have to remember that this killing of this individual won't change the deep hole that Israel has put itself in, and it also won't change the fact that Israel is gunning for a greater Israel probably, and is trying to get as much killing, as much land grab, as much conquest as it possibly can, whilst the West kind of facilitates it and allows it to go on. So unfortunately, I would caution anyone who thinks that this is going to have some massive effect where the fight in Gaza might end overnight, or that Israel will stop its massacring. Unfortunately, we're going to see more of the same, I think. Looks like looks like Roshan's out of action, Dilly. So
yeah, I mean, look, just before I leave, just to kind of echo your points, the very important context here is the U.S. presidential elections. The Biden administration have basically said they've got 30 days, has given Netanyahu 30 days to de-escalate the violence and the attacks on Gaza and to allow humanitarian aid. I mean, we can just read that as you've got 30 days to finish the genocide off, kill as many, bomb as much as you can within that 30 days. However, with Trump looking at an imminent win in November, that will certainly embolden Netanyahu. And I think he will see it as, look, there's pressure domestically to get the hostages back. However, there is still an overwhelming sentiment amongst Israelis of all walks of life, of different ideological spectrums, that there is a certain momentum here. And the momentum is that we've wiped out the leadership of Hezbollah, now with Yahya Sinwar. This is the opportunity now to expand, to land grab, create more settlements, and they will literally justify all of this with the events of October the 7th. So, as Robert has said, I do not think this is the end of the genocide. I don't think this is the end of the regional conflict. I think things will continue. I feel that in the arrogant and nonchalant mindset of the Zionist regime of Israel, they will see that these assassinations of leaders of these groups as a victory. They simply cannot understand and fathom that the idea of Palestinians and Muslims and Arabs of the region resisting them is something that is innate in their DNA. They simply will not accept it. And the more orphans, the more widows that are created, the more resistance fighters that will be created. It's simple maths. It's not that deep.
It's a little bit off topic, but sorry, I am getting comments saying, please answer the super chats. So maybe you can answer this really briefly, Dilly, because we have had it before.
Sure. As a Sunni, is it time to back Iran? I don't think it's a case of backing Iran or not backing Iran. I think it's just a case of seeing what the Palestinians feel towards those who are helping and those who are not helping. It's important to understand that the Palestinians have been abandoned by the Sunni nations. They have been abandoned. They've been betrayed, right? So now, is it a case of do Sunnis back Iran? What does Sunnis backing Iran mean? I'll posit this back to the brothers and sisters who are asking this. And they asked this, they've been asking this recently a lot. What does this mean? What does backing Iran mean? If it means that we should be on the rooftop supporting Iran, I personally will not be doing that. My conscience will not allow me to do that because I haven't forgotten Syria and I haven't forgotten other events. But does that mean, as Sunnis now, we need to gloat and champion and cheerlead whilst Israel carries on with this campaign of death and destruction in the region? Does that mean that as Sunnis from the rooftops, we should be rejoicing when the Palestinians have a different perspective and approach to those who they see are materially helping them and those who have betrayed them? That's what I would say. I don't think there's a question about should Sunnis back Iran. Sunnis in the West backing anyone means very little, actually. What we should be thinking about, especially from a Sunni perspective, and I've shared this with Roshan many times in private conversations, that it is disheartening. It is shameful. It is embarrassing. I apologize on behalf of the Sunni Muslims and the Sunni governments and leaders about how we have betrayed our Palestinian brothers and sisters. I will say the same to the Syrians. That whilst your killers may have been the axis of resistance, that it was Sunni nations that also abandoned you. The Qatar, the UAE, the Saudi, the Turkey that were funding you, giving you arms, allowing you fighters to go in. When the call came from Washington to stop all of that, it stopped. So really the question we should be asking as people of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that what will it take for the awakening of our governments and our rulers? Just recently, there was a joint Air Force military drill by Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, 4 of the most powerful Muslim nations on earth. And it sickened me. It sickened me thinking they're carrying out these fancy Air Force military drills as part of Indus 2024. Whilst Israel, with the same Air Force, is bombing your brothers and sisters and burning people alive in tents. So I think, and I say this specifically towards Sunni governments, Sunni rulers, Sunni majority governments, not the awam, not the ummah, who I believe are very much in unison and in solidarity with the Palestinians. I don't think this is about Sunnis backing Iran. Sunnis sitting in the comforts of their life in the West backing Iran means nothing. I would rather turn the question around and saying, is that what can we do to awaken those nations that have abandoned Palestine? Those nations that continue to allow gas to go into Israel via Azerbaijan and they nod their head of Turkey. What do we say about those nations who continue to trade with Turkey? What do we say about those nations who continue to send lorries full of food to the occupying forces, except for tomatoes? Yeah, do you understand? So these are the things that we need to be. Let's not worry too much about the axis of resistance, the Shia nations and groups, and let's be concerned about what we can do to awaken the Sunni world, who have traditionally, historically, have been the actual liberators of Asham. Let's never forget that. Let's never forget that. Yes.
How long do you have? I know you have to leave shortly. You have another 5 minutes, or
yeah, I'm with you for another 7 minutes.
Another 7 minutes. That's fine. So I'll bring you back in. Just to briefly say that, responding to your point, I mean, I think we need to know that Sunni Muslim nations, they don't even have to fire a shot to end this war.
Yep.
Saudi Arabia and the UAE can just threaten the oil prices, the gas prices. They can just do that tomorrow, and this war is over, because that will freak out the Americans, who will put pressure on the Israelis. They don't even have to fire a shot, these cowards, these Khaliji cowards. They can literally, all they have got to do is threaten the oil and the gas price, game over. But they won't even do that.
Turkey just needs to stop the gas. Jordan just needs to stop sending food. And the Khaliji states need to just threaten the oil embargo. And that's it. Not a single soldier has to die. Not a single bullet has to be fired. And this genocide could have been over months ago. But they chose not to. They chose to continue trading. They chose to continue dealing in oil and food and all of that. They continued firing Iranian. You know, it's funny. I heard King Abdullah in Jordanian officials saying
sword dance he was doing, like he was the
dancing, and then he and his wife rated themselves as the most influential Muslims in the world.
Oh, that's a joke. There's this. I used to carry articles on that every year. The top 500 Muslims in the world, but I stopped doing it because I realized it was a complete joke. And I know that some of our brothers have been named in that, and they're actually tweeting about how they're proud of that. They should be proud, because it literally is a joke. It's basically funded by the Jordanian government, and it's got the King of Jordan as the most influential Muslim in the world. I mean, do me a favor.
And you know, Jordanian officials were saying, we're just letting Israel and Iran know that Jordan will not be a playground in this war. Well, you're firing down Iranian missiles. Yeah. And when you fired down those Iranian missiles, it killed 2 of your citizens inside Jordan.
I mean,
so, I mean, look,
Jordan is just a fake buffer state to protect Israel created by the British. That's what it is. It's not even a real country.
That's literally what it is.
Brothers and sisters, I know Dilly's got to leave, so I'm going to just, if you're just joining us now, alhamdulillah, we're up to over 1,500 people watching live. So the numbers are going up all the time. Thank you very much, Jazakallah khair, for sharing this and getting the word out. Let me bring you up to date. If you're just joining us, I know people might be coming back from work. So Israel has confirmed that it has killed the Hamas leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar. But there is no confirmation yet from Hamas themselves. Just bringing you up with the latest news, the US House Speaker predictably celebrates Sinwar's alleged death and says he was the embodiment of evil. The Israeli army and the Shin Bet, which is their internal security services, have confirmed that he's been killed. A joint statement said that he was killed yesterday, so not today, yesterday, during an operation in the southern Gaza Strip. He wasn't targeted like Nasrallah was targeted, but it was a kind of inadvertent firefight. So Sinwar obviously went down fighting. The quote from the army is that a force of the 828th Brigade, which operated in the area, identified and eliminated 3 terrorists. After completing the process of identifying the body, it can now be confirmed that Sinwar was eliminated. Foreign Minister also basically confirms that news, and I believe that Netanyahu is about to speak in about 25 minutes from now. So we'll take that live. Dilly, I know you got to go, so let's do another question from account name. Jazakallah khair, brother or sister, for your £5 donation. Our duat with the platform in the West have not taken Gaza seriously enough. Why still no condemnation of the Arab regimes? Urge you to see my full comment. I'm not sure where that is. Well, I know that Suleiman has done a sterling job. May Allah be pleased with his efforts. Hamza Yusuf has done less of a sterling job, I think. But yeah, what do you make of the influences and the duat? Have they been on Gaza like they should have been?
I think the UK duat have been very active. I mean, if I'm to mention, the usual faces: Hamza Zorsis, Abdullah Andalusi, Mohammed Hijab, Smile to Jannah, Omar Isa the Nasheed artist, Ali Dawa. Many of the influencers have been very active in the UK. But if they're referring to the, maybe some of the American or non-UK du'at, with the exception to Omar Suleiman and maybe a few others, yes, there has been a deafening silence. There has been these kind of generic du'as, and no one's belittling du'as, no one's belittling supplication. We know that it is the weapon of the believer. No one's denying that. But there has been this kind of generic du'as and supplications whereby they do not mention Israel, they do not mention Zionists, they do not mention Zionism. And, the likes of Mufti Meng have been in the firing line. The likes of Hamza Yusuf definitely has been in the firing line. Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad in the UK has been in the firing line. So, yeah, I mean, some of the very, very senior mashayikh.
Why do you think some of them have been silent, Billy?
So I think the reasons vary. I know that some have chosen not to mention Israel or Zionism, or have chosen not to praise any kind of resistance efforts, is because for a greater dawah purpose, they need to travel. They need to travel to the States. They need to travel to Canada. They need to travel to Saudi Arabia to make Umrah. They need to go to the UAE. And I'm saying this, I'm not going to mention no names. I've spoken to two very world-renowned, prominent da'is. One of them said, Akhi, me calling out Israel and Zionism, or me articulating a defense for why Palestinians should resist, is that more effective and strategic in terms of long-term fruits, or is it me being able to go to these different countries, give dawah, and people accept Islam? That's what they said. Another brother said, very famous, world-renowned da'i, non-UK, basically said, if I criticize X, Y, and Z, and I say this and say that, it's going to be difficult for me to go to Saudi Arabia. I have family and business interests in Saudi Arabia. It'd be difficult for me to operate in the UAE. Now, personally, I don't accept these arguments, but they are arguments nonetheless. These are defenses and cases nonetheless. But yeah, I mean, look, I think the UK guys have been very active. Whether you agree with them or disagree with them, I think the UK Muslims, mashallah, tabarakallah, their influencers, the activists, the different organizations, in their different ways, they have been very vocal and they've been very active. I sadly cannot say the same for the North Americans or the Americans or the very prominent, high-profile white convert mashayikh, the likes of Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, the like of Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad, and others. I don't know why they are so quiet.
I just think now is the time where we've got to lay it on the line. This is the moment. This is Masjid al-Aqsa is at stake here, and not just Masjid al-Aqsa, the whole of Palestine and the Middle East potentially. So the stakes are too high to maintain a silence. And I think those people who are kind of trying to play the long game or whatever, their reputations are going to be harmed, and that itself will hinder their ability to do dawah, because they will be constantly attacked. So I don't really get their logic. Dilly, I know you have to leave, so do you want to have some kind of parting comments before you do?
I mean, look, just some concluding thoughts, brothers and sisters. Look, it's been over a year. More than 45,000 killed. That number is actually much higher. Most of them are women and children. Israel can claim this as a victory as much as they want. Israel can kill as many Palestinians, Lebanese, Muslims, Christians as much as they want in their psychotic, sadistic, expansionist agenda. But it is simple maths. It is simple human nature that if you kill and maim and terrorize in the way that you do, You are merely on an industrial scale giving birth to those who will fight you in the future. End of story, right? Because I even want the non-Muslims who may tune into this live, I'm going to posit to you, is Iraq and Afghanistan the Iraq and Afghanistan that you envisaged when Britain and America went in there in 2001 and 2003? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yet it was British and American soldiers that came back suicidal, came back with PTSD, came back in all these kind of madness. So to conclude, to wrap up, killing leaders, assassinating leaders, flattening entire cities does not mean a victory. A victory for Israel would mean Palestinians en masse accepting the occupation. Victory for Israel is that not a single Palestinian or Lebanese would pick up an arm to fight it. That's a victory. At the moment, they're nowhere near that. They are nowhere near that. Hamas's military capabilities, how much of it is left and sustained, we still don't know. Hezbollah is still firing rockets. Israel will still find itself in a very hostile neighborhood. And no amount of normalization from the Khaliji states will ultimately silence or end the idea of resisting illegal occupation. If anything, the last 12 months would have created more and a future generation of those who will fight and resist and oppose the Zionist entity of Israel. And that's just historical facts.
Brothers and sisters, I think I've actually banned the wrong person from the comments. The comments were going so thick and fast that I was going to ban an Israeli supporter from the comments, but I've ended up banning Baju, and I'm not sure how to unban you, Baju, brother or sister. So please accept my apologies. I didn't actually do that on purpose. Okay, Dilly, off you go then, inshallah. Thank you for turning up today. I know you were a bit busy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know it's unrelated, but I'm going to be in Bangladesh in 3 days, so stay tuned for videos, vox pops, interviews, podcasts, and make dua, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
And you've got a big name coming up, haven't you? I think you're interviewing a big name tomorrow.
Yes, I am.
Divulge it or not?
I've got Numan Ali Khan on tomorrow.
Yeah.
Numan Ali Khan hasn't done a podcast in ages, and I'll speak to him about Gaza and his thoughts on Gaza and his outcome on Gaza. Let's see how it goes down.
All right, Dilly.
Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. So.
Wa alaikum salam.
Okay. Let me just take a few comments. And then, inshallah, we'll go to Robert. Actually, I've kind of lost my way on the comment thread. So maybe we'll go to Robert. Maybe we'll just give you a little bit of an update. So Netanyahu about to speak in about 15 minutes. So what we'll do, I think, Robert, is we'll carry that live. We'll just play out the audio from Al Jazeera or some, live feed so that we can listen to it. We'll react to it, and then we might wrap up then, inshallah, because I didn't intend this to be a long live. But I think what Dilly said there at the end was very important, that, and I said this on Muslims Uncensored yesterday, that all these eye-catching assassinations are ultimately just, they're just moral propaganda victories for Israel. They're not strategic victories. A strategic victory would be ending the missiles raining in on northern Israel, allowing Israeli citizens to return. A strategic victory will be the defeat of Hezbollah or Hamas, so that they aren't able to kill Israeli soldiers, and more Israeli soldiers have been killed today. The strategic victory would have been that normalization agreement with Saudi Arabia. These are strategic victories. Israel hasn't, or return of the hostages. None of this has happened. So the Israelis will be crowing about this. They'll be laughing about it. They'll be taking the mick. They'll be laughing at the pro-Palestinians. But ultimately, it's just, that's what it is. It's just talk. It's and ultimately, as we said before, the leaders of these organizations, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and many others, they expect to die. It's an occupational hazard for them. Robert, I'll bring you back in.
Yeah, sure. No, you make a very valuable point. We obviously, we stay within the realms of UK law here, and we're not going to be, going out of that. But what we can do is stick to the facts. And the fact is that from a Palestinian perspective, Sinwar was very popular, very well liked, even in the West Bank. There's no doubt about that. Highly respected figure, charismatic. That's how he's going to be remembered, and a natural born leader. I think that Israel has just created another martyr. The way in which he appears to have been killed, according to the graphic images that have circulated online, he was in combat gear. He wasn't hiding or shying away in a tunnel somewhere. He died fighting. That's what it appears. And we know from history that when you create martyrs, it empowers that cause, and I think that Israel will celebrate this in the short term and will portray it as a massive win, an objective achieved. They gunned down, I think he was Israel's most wanted after October the 7th. But the fact is that I think within the mind of the Palestinians and within the Muslim world at large, he's going to be sort of remembered forever now as a major martyr in the ongoing struggle for what many see as a struggle for the liberation of Palestine. So Israel is doing harm to itself. This is the issue with colonialism and illegal occupation and land grabbing empires. The native inhabitants of that region can't give up. And any wishful thinking on the part of the occupier that the natives will just voluntarily surrender, it's not an option, because they don't have any other alternative. The other alternative is to die, and that's what Israel is. It's about killing off the native inhabitants of that region. I mean, the point has already been made elsewhere, actually, that if you go into the blood and the DNA and the ancestry of Gaza and Lebanon and the people that live there, they're actually more Semitic, they're more even Jewish in their blood, you can argue, than the people that are killing them right now, because the many of the Israelis have very little, in fact, many have no blood link to the land that they're currently claiming as their homeland, because they're originally from Europe or they're from the steppes. Obviously, I won't complicate us too much with a deep dive into history, but obviously there were many Jewish converts that had nothing to do with that land that then went to Europe and have now tried to go to Israel and create a Jewish supremacist state there. Long story short. So the fact is that, Israeli propaganda will spin this. We're going to have to witness that. But do I believe that Israel is winning this war? Absolutely not. And I think that they are only making it more imperative for Palestinians to fight. And this, I think, is pushing any Palestinians that may believe in a two-state solution or believe that negotiation is the way forward away from that. It's pulling more and more Palestinians away, to the point where the PLO, I think, I don't know what their support base is in Palestine right now, but I suspect they're going to be very less popular after all this has settled down, because the appetite for continued fight against this despicable regime is going to be as high as it's ever been, I think, in recent times. I think we're going to see fighting and more October the 7th going forward. There'll be more and more of that, and it's Israel to blame. It's Israel to blame for that, and their reckless mass murdering attitude.
I should say that we don't have freedom of speech in this country, do we, Robert? Because we can't speak as freely as we should be allowed to speak as journalists, because there are terrorism laws. Hamas is on the prescribed terrorist list. So is Hezbollah. So is Hizb ut-Tahrir as well. So we can't talk freely as journalists about these groups, unfortunately, because I would like to talk a lot more freely. We're constrained in what we have to say in the UK. I know that brothers and sisters in America and other countries, they have much more lax, freedom of speech laws, or, so they can express themselves more freely. But I think as a journalist, what I would say is that across the world, and especially in the Muslim world, Yahya Sinwar will be seen as a freedom fighter and as a hero and a martyr today. That's the reality across the Arab world and the Muslim world. In the West, he's seen as a terrorist. In the UK and the West, amongst the media and the politicians, and according to the law, he is a terrorist. But I'm just talking neutrally as a journalist now. So, as Dilly said before, what do martyrs, if he is seen like that way in Gaza, and he definitely will be, and across the Arab and Muslim world, his death will just produce more followers, right? So we've seen great Muslims like Umar al-Mukhtar, for example, and he was killed by the Italians. But what did it lead on to? It led to the liberation of Libya at a later date, and now he's celebrated across the Muslim world. I'm not sure what Yahya Sinwar's legacy will be, but he will be seen as a martyr by millions of Arabs and Muslims all around the world. And the only other thing that I was going to say yesterday is I think, brothers and sisters, we have to realize that this is a long war of attrition, and Israel is the more powerful entity militarily, politically, financially, maybe not financially, but and in terms of its intelligence capability. So what it wants is a short, sharp war where it can just eliminate all its enemies, create more living space for it because it's a tiny country. It needs more resources. So it seeks to expand into Lebanon, expand into Syria. It's already done that with the Golan Heights. It wants to take Gaza. It wants to take the West Bank. Many members of this Netanyahu regime want to take bits of Egypt, bits of Iraq, bits of Saudi Arabia, etc., etc. They want a greater Israel. That is the goal. And obviously, they want to destroy Masjid al-Aqsa and build their third temple as well. Israel is a extremist, Jewish, supremacist, religious, fundamental society now. Before, it was more of a secular society. Lots of atheists founded Israel. But now it's becoming more religious, but fundamentally extremist religious, with a expansionist ideology. So this is literally what we're facing. And it's going to take an effort on behalf of every single Muslim in the world, I've said. Every single Muslim in the world can play a part in struggling against Israel. No matter how big their platform is or how small their platform is, we all have a role to play. While I go through the comments and maybe see if Netanyahu is due to speak any minute now, so I might interrupt you, Robert, but I'll let you back in, inshallah.
Yeah, I think that's one message that you've made tonight and previously, which is really important. We all have to be brave as we possibly can. We don't have the ability to liberate Palestine. I don't, you don't. Many of our viewers don't. All of them, in fact, probably. But the fact is that we obviously still have a part to play, and we will be judged eventually, and we will be asked what we did, why we didn't do what we should have done, and so on. And I think we all have to look at this situation and think, like, we cannot do nothing. We cannot just simply sit back and allow it, because, I mean, we saw that poor family getting burned to death right in front of our eyes, incinerated in a tent. Shaban was giving blood, apparently, to help people, and he was still targeted and burned alive and killed in the most horrific way possible. And we witnessed that literally on camera in front of our eyes. How has this been allowed to be normalized? It boggles the mind how the West can just be okay with this situation. We have to resist and to fight back against this. We have our responsibilities. And I think for us here in the West, in our realm, one of the things which we can do and which we should be doing better is confronting the core issue, which is Zionism, the political ideology behind everything that's going on in Palestine. Zionism is literally the worst thing to hit the region since the Mongol invasion, since the plague, like the Black Death. It's way worse probably even than the Crusades. It's the worst thing to hit the region probably ever. That's as bad as it is, and we have to be at least brave enough to talk about it. We've now reached a crossroads here where there are pro-Palestine forces in this country, some pretty big organizations as well that many of our viewers will probably know and respect, that actually behind the scenes are telling people, don't talk about Zionism. It's too hot. It's too controversial. It'll create a blowback. Just talk about the normal free Palestine stuff. You know, keep it light, keep it free Palestine. And I think even at the time, people were saying you shouldn't say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. You remember when that became controversial?
But I just stop you there, Robert, because I think, are you referring to the big demos in London where they tend to have the same speakers all the time, Jeremy Corbyn and all the same faces every single time? And I think they were expressly told not to talk about Zionism during those demos.
Yeah.
I think who's that famous American Palestinian activist who did talk about Zionism and got them into a whole lot of trouble? I can't remember his name.
El-Kurd.
Yes, Mohammed El-Kurd,
yeah,
yes.
Mohammed El-Kurd. Yeah, and that was a fantastic speech, actually, which I know Zionist groups spun to mislead what he was actually saying. They did that on purpose. It's part of their tactics, to smear people and to use those types of tactics. But it was actually a fantastic speech. It was the best speech I've probably ever heard, including because the ambassador to Palestine speaks there regularly, and he gives great talks as well. Mohammed El-Kurd actually gave the greatest speech I think I've ever heard here in London. And he addressed the issue of Zionism directly and bravely, and he gave them multiple slaps on their head. And that's why it created such outrage,
It's not as if he has a lot of competition, though, is it, Robert? Given the quality of those speeches we hear every Saturday.
Well, you was talking earlier on about the 500 most influential Muslims list and how it was a bit of a joke and so on. I must admit,
if I was on it, I'd say the opposite, but yeah.
Well, I was actually going to say, to be fair, maybe I'm obviously biased, but come on, 5 pillars should be in the list.
We should be number one.
You're telling me out of all of the UK Muslim groups, 5 pillars isn't influential. I have to be a bit arrogant here and say in the UK, 5 pillars is very influential. I'm self-promoting here, but I mean, we should also be in protests, I think.
To be fair to that list, I did see Paul Williams' name on it. And Paul, especially recently, he's been doing a lot of anti-Israel stuff and pro-Palestine stuff. So it's not as if they're just banning all the anti-Zionists. But I don't know. Yeah, I just don't take that list seriously. I don't think
I mean, basically, it's such an important thing now because we have to think, what can we do? And I get it. There's a place for weekly protests. There's a place for, the pro-Palestine independent MPs giving their statements in Parliament and issuing letters. There's a place for all of that. There's a place for the BDS, blah, 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 so on. There's many different ways that you can help the Palestinian cause. But at this time, in this desperate state, we have to think, what is the most effective way that we can hit back? And it has to be creating a debate on the issue of Zionism. We have to. And I know that talking about Zionism gets people in trouble. It can ruin people's careers. Academics have faced this. It can lobby groups go after you and stuff like that. It's not easy, but we have to tackle. It's not easy for a reason, and anything good is not achieved easily. So we have to be brave on this issue, especially us Muslims, because at the end of the day, the Palestinian issue is more linked to us as Muslims than it is to left-wingers or socialists. I know that socialists like to jump on the Palestine issue very much so, and it's welcomed. But let's remember that Masjid al-Aqsa is a Islamic holy place, okay? And the Palestinians are mostly Muslims, and this is Muslim land that's at stake here, okay? So this is a Muslim cause, ultimately. And so we have to be the brave of the brave. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I really believe in this point, because it's the obvious route we should take. But there are actually forces in the pro-Palestine movement here that are resisting that and are behind the scenes actually conspiring to stop people like us who are willing to talk about Zionism harshly, because even they think that we're being too extreme or that we're damaging the cause. And clearly, actually, in reality, if you're too gutless, if you're too scared to confront the issue of Zionism, to talk about it publicly, and you're worried about the blowback, then you're not good enough for the cause. There's too much at stake, and you need to either go hard or go home. And unfortunately, I think politically, the Palestinian cause is not actually being represented that well here in the UK. If you look at who's elected, who's talking about Palestine inside Westminster and in political circles, the people on the street are angry, but I don't think so in the leadership of the movement.
Darkness is no longer here, and that the light will come soon. Hassan Nasrallah died.
So this is Benjamin Netanyahu speaking now. I'm just going to put the sound up. We'll listen.
In order to eliminate the axis of evil. And
I think you've muted yourself, Roshan, so I can't hear your audio. Are you playing it out?
Insisted to continue this war, and why we have insisted to enter Rafah, so that we can reach all the leaders of Hamas, including Yahya Sinwar and many other leaders. I salute all the efforts exerted by our soldiers and also by the Shin Bet security. We have demonstrated today that all those who try to harm us, this is what happened to them, and how the forces of good can always beat the forces of evil and darkness. The war is still ongoing and it's costly. And I express my sincerest condolences to all the families of the soldiers who died. They are heroes, especially during the last days. We are closer to victory. As King David said, I will eliminate all my enemies and I will not go back before achieving victory. People of Israel, we are currently at war, and a lot of challenges are still facing us, and we have to remain resilient, and we need to stand firm on our ground and to continue to fight, and with the blessings of God we will achieve victory.
Let's bring back Gideon Levy, who was listening in to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu making his first statement since the confirmation of Yahya Sinwar being killed in.
I'm just going to try and find, can you hear me, Robert? Yeah, I'm just going to try and find the continuation of that live because they cut it short. But yeah, your quick reaction to that. So basically, Netanyahu saying that he will kill Israel's enemy wherever they are, particularly Hamas. He was telling the Israeli public that the war is still ongoing. So it looks like that's a hint that it's not over yet. He's not going to declare victory. Then he made a biblical reference to King David in the Bible. I don't think Netanyahu himself is very religious, but obviously he has to appeal to a right-wing religious kind of extremist community. And again, he said that King David said he will eliminate all his enemies. So I think, I mean, obviously that's Prophet Dawood, alayhi salam. We don't believe in the same conception of Prophet Dawood as the Jews do, I don't believe, and certainly not that interpretation. And Israel has been carrying those words to the extreme over the last year in terms of completely decimating and destroying Gaza. It's not just this genocide that's ongoing, but the infrastructure and all the horrible stuff that goes along with it. Your brief reaction to those comments, Robert, while I try to find a continuation of that live feed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was expected. I didn't believe that he was going to call for an end to the war or anything like that. I don't think he can at this stage because obviously, from his perspective, he just hasn't achieved very much. The hostages remain held, many of them. And that, of course, is key because a lot of the political pressure that he's under internally inside Israel is over the pressure to get the hostages out, even if it means negotiating with Hamas and reaching some kind of deal with the group, something which Israel has blocked multiple times, apparently, if you believe some reports. So obviously, this is a lunatic. It's like you said, he's being played like a puppet by more extremist fanatics in his own unity government. So obviously he was already a lunatic to begin with, willing to kill innocent people en masse, but he actually has now facilitated the rise of absolute crazies, the Greater Israel extremist Zionists into government, the ones that are talking, in fact, in some cases about the possibility of a greater Israel happening one day, and how they would like to see it happen. And of course, he's still fighting in Lebanon. They have soldiers in the south currently fighting. So he's really up to his eyeballs in this conflict now. And I don't think he even realizes how exactly he can get out of it. I think he's hoping that Trump will win soon, become the next president, and will then facilitate perhaps an expansion of hostilities in the region, and might be willing to enter the war and take on Iran. I think that's his best case scenario. And obviously he would be free to do whatever he wants then, and even to avoid any potential repercussions for the genocide that he's been committing against the Palestinians, because by then world attention would have moved on towards the bigger conflict with Iran. So, this is just a lunatic who I think he's just desperately trying to hold on to power for as long as possible. All of the talk of corruption scandals and the challenges against him over genocide, they've all been put on the back burner whilst the conflict continues. The second the conflict ends, the genocide ends, then of course Netanyahu faces real pressure, potential ramifications, potential consequences for his actions. So obviously he wants to keep this going as long as possible. And I think that he will get that right now, because the US, the UK, Europe, they're willing to keep arming, keep funding, keeps providing political support. I mean, I saw a headline today, I think it was a complete joke, or was it yesterday? The UK was apparently considering sanctions. It was willing to admit that they're thinking about maybe giving some sanctions on Israel. I mean, it's been over a year, of genocide, and we just saw a kid get burned to death. Literally toasted, roasted. I mean, they talk about how the Jews were treated during the Holocaust, being burned alive and stuff like that. Well, there's people being burned alive now, by the way. Why is that being allowed? What, because he's Arab, because he's Muslim? That's okay? How have we normalized it? I thought we were done normalizing genocide and killing people and massacring people. I thought we were done with looking the other way when a religious minority was obviously being mass slaughtered on purpose for the objective of eliminating that people from the planet. But clearly not. And the irony is that the West, that it prides itself on the fact that we defeated the Nazis, well, actually, it's the West that's now making this genocide against the Arab Muslim peoples of Gaza happen today. This is a modern day Holocaust we're witnessing, and it's heartbreaking. But yeah, obviously I'm going off on a tangent here, but this is going to be a big thing. And I think that the region will change. There could be a massive region-wide war, could even lead to a war that expands out of the Middle East eventually. Yeah. I just think that there's no end in sight. And these individual killings of senior leaders of any particular group in this fight, they're not going to change anything positively on the ground. It's only going to re-encourage people's willingness to keep fighting and to keep dying, because there's no alternative. It's win or lose.
Okay, so just to wrap up, apparently Netanyahu's statement was very short. It wasn't a long statement, so I think we actually got most of it. And he was just describing how Yahya Sinwar was killed. So just to recap more from the Israeli army statement, which I think Netanyahu basically reiterated, and he said at the year of so this is according to the Israeli army, the IDF, at the end of a year-long manhunt, Israeli soldiers from the Southern Command killed Yahya Sinwar on Wednesday night, so yesterday night. Following dozens of operations this year, the Israeli forces reduced Sinwar's area of activity. In recent weeks, Israeli forces have been operating in southern Gaza based on intelligence that pointed out where senior Hamas officials were suspected of being. Then a force of the 828th Brigade eliminated 3 fighters. After identifying the body, it was possible to confirm that Sinwar was killed. And the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who is wanted war criminal by the ICJ, he has added to that statement saying that Israel has brought justice to its citizens by killing the man who orchestrated the deadly October the 7th attacks. He said Sinwar died while beaten, persecuted, and on the run. He didn't die as a commander, but as someone who only cared for himself. Gallant added that Sinwar is the latest of a string of assassinations of both Hamas and Hezbollah leadership in recent months. This is a clear message to residents of Gaza and the rest of Hamas militants. And the final message was, release the rest of the hostages, free them, and surrender. Is that going to happen, Robert, before we conclude? Release the hostages, free them, and surrender. That's Israel's message to Hamas. Is that going to happen?
No, I don't think so. I mean, why would it happen? They've just killed the main negotiator. So why would they just suddenly say, "Oh, okay, we'll just give you what you want now"? That's not a strategy. I mean, Israel has had multiple opportunities. I would argue they've probably had many opportunities to negotiate with Hamas to the point where they would actually come to a deal. And depending, there's been different reports saying that a deal was offered here, a deal was offered there. One side rejected it, another side rejected it. The fact of the matter is that we know from past history that deals have been made between Israel and Hamas, Israel and Hezbollah. There was allegations made that apparently Nasrallah was willing to strike a deal to de-escalate tensions between Israel and Lebanon right before he was assassinated. I'm not sure if that was true or confirmed. It was just allegations, I think. But the fact is, I'm confident that Israel is the one blocking any chances for this. And I think it's because Netanyahu and the Israeli regime doesn't care about loss of life on either side. Okay, we know that they've been killing their own people since October the 7th. There have been claims of them killing their own people on October the 7th. There have been claims that, well, we know they've actually killed their own citizens in Gaza with their reckless shooting and bombing campaign. They're killing their own people. So I just do not believe that this regime actually even cares if any of the hostages come back alive or not. For them, this is an opportunity to mow the lawn, as Norman Finkelstein has referenced, in Gaza, massacring a generation, killing as many as they can, and maybe ideally capturing more land in Lebanon, capturing land in Gaza for good, and just kind of continuing on with the ethnic cleansing, continuing on, taking some land in West Bank. That's what I think this is really all about. It's opportune. Zionists are opportunists. They saw an opportunity to push Zionism after World War I and II, and now they see an opportunity here to expand, I think, more so, and to solidify their illegal conquest and stealing project of Palestine. That's what this has all been about, and I think it's still the case today.
Robert, I think it is prayer time now as well, so we are going to wrap up now in the next 5 minutes. I found this question quite interesting about how has all the leadership been killed. Now, I mean, I remember when you told me in the Five Pillars office a few weeks back that they're going to get Nasrallah, and I was incredulous. I thought, no, they won't get Nasrallah. They might get others, but they won't get Nasrallah. And obviously you turned out to be right, because they did have a level of intelligence amongst Hezbollah that surprised me, quite frankly, and amongst the Iranians as well, I'm sure. But I did expect Sinwar to be killed. I did expect that Yahya Sinwar. I'm surprised that he's lasted 1 year, because obviously Gaza is a small space. It's not a big space. There's nowhere to run. Technically, Hezbollah could even possibly leave the country. They could get out of Lebanon, go to Syria, go to Iran, whatever. Whereas there's literally nowhere for the Gazans to go. And I've been to Gaza. It's tiny. You could probably drive from one side of Gaza to the other in, I don't know, a couple of hours or something. I can't remember. So I did expect that Yahya Sinwar would be killed by Israel, and that he's lasted over a year has surprised me. But I think the message to take away from this is that Israel it's a propaganda victory. It's a morale boosting victory, and Israel's going to cry about it. But these leaders will be replenished by Hamas. They'll be replenished by Hezbollah. They'll be replenished by anyone that opposes Israel, because literally death is something that these people welcome. And the idea of resistance, like Dilly said, it's an idea. You can't kill an idea. You can kill human beings. You can kill me. You can kill you. but you can't kill the idea. The idea lives on. It lives on in the children of the Palestinians who've had their parents killed and who have nothing to lose. They will never forget that. And ultimately, if Israel are going to win, they're going to have to kill every single one of us. Okay? They're going to have to kill every single Palestinian, every single Lebanese. And I'm sorry, we have more children than they do. So that ain't going to happen. And this is going to last, this is going to last 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years, whatever it takes. Do the Zionists have the same will as the pro-Palestinians do? I doubt it. I saw a video today by a Jewish rabbi, a Zionist Jewish rabbi. You know what he said? He said, what the Muslims have that we don't have is spiritual power. We have military power. We have financial, economic, political power, but we don't have spiritual power. And what is going to win in the end, and what is going to make the Muslims win in the end, is that spiritual power, unless we can match it. And sorry, nobody in the world can match the spiritual power of the Muslims. I'll let you conclude, Robert, inshallah.
Yeah, I mean, just, if we just look back at history, I mean, there have been so many massive, powerful empires and just things that have popped up. I mean, just look at how the Romans ruled. They literally controlled all of the Mediterranean, the Western world for hundreds and hundreds of years, and in the end, they came crumbling down. And it was the barbarians, as the Romans would have known them, that brought them down eventually. So the fact is that we just have time on our side. This dunya is not meant to be a pleasant place for the believers. It's meant to be like a prison for the believer, and that's what we all believe. I mean, I've never in my life ever known a people to be so in love with and so believing in their religion as the Muslims, because whenever I meet and speak to Muslims who are literally suffering the most horrific way possible, whether it's Palestinians or Lebanese that I met more recently, I talk to them. I worry that maybe their hardships are going to pull them away from love of religion and love of Islam. But actually it strengthens their faith, because they know that Allah is the only one who's going to help them. The United Nations is not going to come to their aid. America's not going to come swinging in to help them. And if they do, it will be to destroy their country anyway, as we saw with Iraq. They know that the Muslim leadership is not even going to come to help necessarily. The only one who is helping them, who gives them any peace of mind, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the reality here. And we know that a day will come when Allah punishes people for their wrong deeds. And the wrong deeds committed by Israel and by their supporters is so horrific. I mean, we saw that poor kid burning, but that fire is no way going to be as hot as the fires of hell, to be honest with you. And do I think that kid is in hell? No, I think he's going to go straight to paradise. I mean, people have called him a martyr, but there are Quranic quotes about if you die burning, then obviously you are one of the great martyrs. So, we just have to be patient and trust in Allah. He will provide justice for all of the wrongdoing that's been done. That's the only thing that gives us, it continues to give us strength, is closeness to Islam. And I always find strength from reading the Quran. It reminds us of these important facts.
I think we should take this question before we leave, from Mohammed Mudassir, who has been asking about, is it true that Saudi is part of the Israel plan because they believe Mount Sinai is there, called Jebel al-Lawz? I'm not sure. All I know is I saw a map of Greater Israel that includes parts of Saudi Arabia, and I think it is the parts around that area. So I think, I mean, obviously I'm not a biblical expert, but according to the Bible, Israel was bigger than it is now. And there are parts, I mean, different Zionists, religious and secular Zionists, they have a different conception of what Greater Israel is. Some think it's just the West Bank only, not even Gaza. Others think it's Gaza, that it's the Sinai in Egypt, parts of it's Lebanon, it's Syria, it's Jordan, it's bits of Saudi Arabia, bits of Iraq. That's the maximalist point of view. And I think that's the point of view that Smotrich and Ben-Gvir in Netanyahu's coalition regime have. So it's not something that is just pie in the sky and fantasy. It's something that is wanted by the people running Israel today. Robert, the only thing I was I mean, we have 2,000 people nearly watching now. Alhamdulillah, that's a lot of people. So it's a bit sad to finish when so many people are watching and probably people are joining, but I never meant this to be that long alive. And I think we've done a comprehensive reaction. Brothers and sisters, we are going to be at GPU on Saturday. I think, Robert, do you want to sell it? I sold it very badly yesterday during the podcast. So do you want to tell people about that?
Yeah, so it's a massive Muslim event that's going to be held on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We're obviously going to be there. We have a stall provided for us. It's an initiative headed by Islam Channel. There's going to be some major movers and shakers there, some influential figures as well, who are going to be speaking as well as just attending, and there'll be food there and Muslims of all stripes. So yeah, do come along if you can. It'll be fantastic. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's the first time I've ever been, so it'll be new for me. But it'll be very enjoyable simply because I'll get a chance, I think, to meet a lot of people who I haven't met so far, people who I do know that we don't get a chance to rub shoulders with regularly because we're all so busy. And just to meet you guys, members of the public, supporters of ours, if you want to have a chance to chat to us pretty freely, come to this event, because that's one of the rare opportunities you'll get to pin us down in one location. So do come. It's going to be great. It's going to be interesting. And I think we can all appreciate just being in an environment that's full of Muslims. You know, it's always difficult to get that sometimes here.
No non-Muslims allowed. GPU.
Yeah. But for someone like me, a convert with a lot of non-Muslim family members still, I always appreciate just going to one of those proper Muslim environments and mixing and mingling with fellow brothers and sisters who are practicing. Yeah. It's just going to be great, I think. So yeah, do come along if you can. Just remind me where it is.
Yeah. You're going to, you don't know where it is. I'm not going to tell you now. You just have to put your sat nav on and hope for the best. It's in the XL Centre. It's in the XL Centre. So those of you that know London, brothers and sisters, you'll know the XL Centre in East London. I'm not sure where the nearest tube is, but I think you might even have its own tube. Is it on the Central Line, or I don't know? I won't give you the wrong directions, but it's the big conference centre in East London called the XL Centre. I think the last time I went to GPU was like 15 years ago, and they had about 25,000 people there every day on the Saturday and the Sunday. So it was huge, massive amount of footfall. I'm not sure if they're going to get those kind of numbers this time, but it's going to be a big do with all of the kind of movers and shakers in the Muslim community there. Obviously, there'll be international speakers on the stage. There'll be nasheed artists, if that's your type of thing. I know it is for you, Robert, not for me. And but there'll also be a part of when you said there's going to be food. It's not free food; it's paid food, right? Just to clarify that, you're going to have to pay for your food. This is not something that Five Pillars is organising. We're just going to have a small little stall there. So wherever the stall section is, I don't even know where it is at the moment, but wherever all the businesses and organisations are, there'll be loads of stalls. So Five Pillars will have a stall there. Myself and Robert will be there from around, I guess, 10:30 on Saturday morning, and we'll probably spend most of the day there. Other guys from Five Pillars will be there as well, helping us set up. It's basically meet and greet. We're going to be chatting. We're not going to be flogging stuff. We might be flipping burgers. We're going to be flipping burgers like kebabs, and we're not going to do that. We're just going to. It's literally meeting and greeting, and meeting you guys that comment on our forums, on our social media, but we actually don't ever get to meet you in person. So yeah, come along if you can, inshallah. And we may even be there Sunday as well, but we're definitely going to be there Saturday.
Inshallah. Yeah,
right.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, brothers and sisters, I'm going to wrap up now. So just to briefly summarize, we did this live, impromptu, unscripted, live at very short notice because Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, looks like he's been assassinated by Israel, although Hamas have yet to confirm it. But Israel seems pretty sure that he has been assassinated. In brief, our conclusion is that this is a propaganda, morale-boosting victory for Israel, but it's not a strategic victory. Hamas will fight on, we are very sure, as will Hezbollah. Israel has not achieved any of its strategic aims, and nor will it, but it will continue killing the leadership of these organizations, as well as many, many civilians, in continuing this genocide, destroying lots of infrastructure, killing those women, killing those children, and it's not 41,000 that are dead. I bet you it's about 200,000 at least, because so many are buried under the rubble and unaccounted for. On that sad note, brothers and sisters, I'm going to call it a day. So, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.